Okay, so here's something that happened to me recently. It was honestly so weird that I had to tell someone about it, and this felt like the right place. So, about a month ago, I got a friend request from an acquaintance I hadn't seen in years. We used to chat here and there, but I didn't think much of it. You know how Facebook works, you reconnect with people, but it's all just surface level stuff, right? Anyway, I clicked on her profile. Now, I didn't expect anything out of the ordinary, but I noticed something weird. In her relationship status section, it said she was in a relationship with someone. And the name of that someone? It was a fake profile of mine. Like, an old account I created years ago, just to mess around with some online games or whatever. I stopped. And for a second, I thought I was seeing things. But nope. The profile picture? My face. The name? My fake name. Everything was familiar but not mine. That was definitely my photo, though. And she was dating this person. So, I'm sitting there, staring at the screen. I don't know how to process it. Is this some kind of joke? Or am I about to be pulled into something way more bizarre than I could have ever imagined? Okay, so I'm sitting there, staring at this profile like some kind of idiot. I go back and forth, refreshing the page, thinking maybe it's some glitch in Facebook or something. But no, it's still there, my face, on some fake profile, and this woman claiming to be in a relationship with him. I can't even describe the first wave of emotions. It was like my brain couldn't make sense of what I was seeing. I started to feel a little dizzy, like I was in some kind of alternate reality. And then, of course, the anger hit. Like, real anger. How could someone do this? I don't know if it was a kind of betrayal or just a twisted form of deception, but I felt like I'd been hit in the gut. All those times we'd talked, hung out, exchanged thoughts about life, was all of that a lie? Was she pretending to be friendly while secretly involved with some version of me that didn't even exist? I wanted to scream, to just text her and demand answers, but I held back. What if I was just overreacting? I didn't know what to think, but I definitely didn't want to jump to conclusions. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something really messed up was going on here. I'm not gonna lie, at that point, I started to do some digging. I went back to her profile. Looked at every post, every comment, trying to find some clue that would explain this mess. Was she just trolling? Or was this some strange coincidence? But the more I dug, the worse it got. Her profile was full of photos, some of her alone, some with the fake me. And the comments? They were all from her friends, talking about how cute we looked together. It felt like I was trapped in some bad alternate reality. She wasn't just joking around, she was pretending to be with someone who wasn't real. I started checking out the fake profile, seeing if I could find any clues there. It was a shadow of my old account, filled with posts that weren't mine, but they sure looked like they were. Like, posts about our relationship, random stuff I never said, but made it seem so real. Whoever had created this profile had taken the time to mimic me perfectly. And then, I found a message, one of those deep, heartfelt confessions of love. My heart dropped when I saw it. It was from her, talking to the fake version of me. There was no doubt now. She was emotionally invested in someone who didn't even exist. I was a mess at this point. It felt like everything was crashing down on me, and I didn't even know where to start. Anger, confusion, disbelief, it was like a damn roller coaster I couldn't get off. I kept telling myself, it's just a joke, it's not real, it's just some weird social media thing, but deep down, I knew it was something far worse than that. The worst part? I couldn't shake the idea that I had been used. This woman, this person I had talked to, maybe even trusted in some small way, had gone and built an entire fake relationship around someone who didn't even exist. I mean, what the hell? What does that say about me? Was I not enough for her in the first place? Why the fake profile? But then, as the anger faded, something else crept in, sadness. Like this quiet, creeping sadness that slowly started to choke out the rage. I kept thinking about the moments we'd shared. The laughs, the conversations, the times she'd confided in me. Was any of it real? Or was she just pretending, using my image for her own messed up version of a relationship? It hurt. It really, really hurt. I started to feel betrayed on a level I hadn't anticipated, and it was worse because it wasn't something you could just confront face to face. It was a betrayal in the most digital, impersonal way possible. At this point, I couldn't ignore it any longer. I knew I had to confront her, even if I didn't know exactly how. My brain was racing, trying to figure out what my next step should be. Should I message her directly? Should I call her out publicly? I didn't even know what would get me the answers I needed, but I sure as hell wasn't going to let it slide. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't just act out of anger. I needed to get to the bottom of this. I couldn't go in all guns blazing, I had to keep my cool, or this whole thing could go south really fast. But the idea of talking to her directly made me sick to my stomach. What was I even going to say? Hey, so I saw you're in a relationship with someone who looks exactly like me, but isn't me? I felt ridiculous just thinking about it. So, I decided to take a different route. I started to gather all the evidence. Screenshots of her profile, of the fake account, the messages, basically, everything that pointed to her involvement in this bizarre situation. I needed something concrete before I said anything. Something that would prove this wasn't just a weird misunderstanding. But as I sat there, preparing myself, I couldn't help but think, was this even worth it? Would I get anything meaningful from this confrontation? Was closure even possible in a situation like this? Okay, so I had all my evidence ready, screenshots, the whole shebang, and I was still stuck on what to say. I mean, this wasn't a normal conversation. It wasn't like confronting someone about a miscommunication or a simple lie. This was deep. This was a fake identity built around me. But I knew I couldn't just let it go. So I did it. I sent her a message. I kept it as calm and direct as I could, even though my hands were shaking as I typed it out. I said something like, "Hey, I saw your profile and I noticed that you're in a relationship with someone who looks like me, but isn't me. What's going on here?" I almost couldn't believe I was writing that. It felt like I was talking to a stranger, someone I didn't even recognize anymore. But I hit send and just waited. The seconds felt like hours. My heart was pounding, and I kept checking my phone, convinced I'd get some kind of excuse or explanation that would make it all make sense. But nothing. And then, a reply came. The reply came, and I could feel my heart drop as I read it. She didn't apologize, didn't even acknowledge how messed up this was. Instead, it was like she tried to downplay everything, like this was no big deal. Her response was vague, almost dismissive. "Hey, I think you're overreacting. It's just a joke, we were just having fun with the whole thing. Nothing serious, really." I was stunned. That was her response? She wasn't apologizing or trying to explain herself, she was brushing it off like I was some oversensitive idiot. It made me even angrier, and this time, it wasn't the confusion or disbelief that was hitting me. It was straight-up frustration. I had gone through all this mental turmoil, all this emotional upheaval, just for her to act like it wasn't a big deal? I took a deep breath. I didn't want to let myself go off on her, but I was furious. What kind of person uses someone else's identity to build a fake relationship? And then acts like it's just a fun joke? I was torn. Do I keep going back and forth with her? Or do I just cut it off and walk away from this whole mess? I sat there, staring at her message for what felt like forever. The more I thought about it, the more I realized something that hit me like a ton of bricks. This wasn't just some harmless prank or misunderstanding. It wasn't a joke. She had spent time building this fake relationship around me, using my picture and my name, and it wasn't for some innocent laugh, it was for attention. She wanted something from it. Whether it was validation, sympathy, or just playing some weird emotional game, I couldn't tell. But I knew one thing for sure, she wasn't seeing this from my perspective. This wasn't a joke to me. It was a violation. I had spent emotional energy on someone who wasn't even being real with me, and now I was left with the wreckage of whatever fantasy she had created. I don't know if it was the way she responded, or if it was the overwhelming weight of everything finally sinking in, but I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't confused. I was hurt. Deeply, profoundly hurt. That realization stung. But it also made me see this whole situation more clearly. She wasn't the victim. I was. At that point, I knew I needed to make some decisions. It was clear that I was dealing with someone who wasn't emotionally mature enough to understand the damage they caused. But the real question was, what now? After that message, I realized that I couldn't keep letting this situation consume me. I'd wasted enough mental energy trying to figure out what was going on, and honestly, I didn't need to waste any more of it on someone who didn't even respect me enough to be honest. So, I made a decision. I was done. I was cutting ties. There was no point in dragging this out or trying to figure out why she did it. The truth was, it didn't matter anymore. She'd chosen to deceive me, and that was enough. I deleted her as a friend on Facebook, blocked her fake account, and deleted the screenshots of everything. I didn't want to keep holding on to the past, even if it was just a digital one. This wasn't going to be a chapter I'd look back on with any sense of closure or meaning. It was a mess. It was manipulative. And it wasn't something I needed to carry with me. It wasn't easy. There was still a part of me that wanted answers, that wanted to reach out and say something, anything, to make sense of it all. But I knew I had to put my own peace of mind first. I was better off walking away from this toxic situation. Walking away wasn't as simple as I thought it would be. I deleted the Facebook profile, blocked the accounts, and tried to move on, but there was a lingering feeling that wouldn't go away. It wasn't just the betrayal itself, it was the feeling of being tricked, of not seeing it coming. There were moments when I'd be sitting at home, minding my own business, and then bam, the thought would hit me again like a punch in the gut. How could she do that? How could she use me like that? It felt like I had been part of someone else's twisted game, a game I didn't even know I was playing. But with time, the pain started to fade. Not all at once, but little by little. The weirdest part was that I began to feel sorry for her. I know, it sounds strange after everything, but I realized she had to have been in a pretty bad place mentally to do something like that. Creating a fake relationship just to feel validated or to have some kind of emotional connection, it's messed up, but it's also kind of sad. She wasn't some heartless villain. She was just someone who had probably never learned how to have real, honest connections. It was a twisted way to seek attention, but in the end, it wasn't my problem anymore. It took some time, but I started to see things differently. For a while, I was stuck in a loop of anger and confusion, replaying the whole situation in my head. But eventually, I realized something important. This wasn't just a betrayal of trust, it was a reflection of what I had allowed to happen. I had gotten too caught up in this strange, online world where things weren't always as they seemed. And I had let someone else's manipulation mess with my head. The biggest lesson? People will sometimes do strange and hurtful things. It doesn't always make sense, and it's not always personal. In the end, the only thing I had control over was how I responded. And once I accepted that, a lot of the bitterness started to fade away. This experience didn't just teach me about her, it taught me about myself. About my boundaries, my emotional needs, and how I deal with betrayal. I realized I had been too trusting of people, too willing to let them in without considering if they were worthy of that trust. I started to think about my own role in relationships, both online and offline. If something feels off, if something doesn't sit right, don't ignore it. Trust your instincts. I ignored mine, and I ended up tangled in someone else's mess. But I was stronger for it. I had learned to walk away when I needed to protect myself when I couldn't rely on anyone else to do it for me. One thing I started doing after all of this was reflecting on my own behavior and emotional responses. It sounds cliché, but I realized I was placing a lot of emotional weight on something that was, ultimately, out of my control. Yes, she had lied to me. Yes, it hurt. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't let her actions continue to have power over me. The reality is, we can't control what other people do. We can't prevent them from making poor choices, from lying, or from acting in ways that don't align with our values. But what we can control is how we choose to react. I spent too much time reacting emotionally, trying to solve a problem that wasn't mine to fix. I couldn't undo the fake profile, the deceit, or the manipulation, but I could control how I handled it moving forward. And that meant learning how to let go of the anger, the sadness, the resentment. It wasn't easy, but it was freeing. That's when I started thinking about closure, not as something that depended on her response or apology, but something I could give myself. I didn't need answers from her. I didn't need her to validate my feelings or apologize for her actions. I just needed to accept the situation and move forward. As the days went by, I started to realize that the only way to truly free myself from this whole mess was to forgive her. Not for her sake, but for mine. Holding on to anger and resentment wasn't going to get me anywhere. It was just weighing me down, stopping me from moving forward. Now, don't get me wrong, this wasn't some grand, noble act of forgiveness. I wasn't pretending that what she did was okay. But I came to understand that forgiveness wasn't about condoning what happened, it was about releasing the grip it had on me. I had to let go of the bitterness to reclaim my peace. That didn't mean I'd forget what she did. It wasn't that easy. But I could choose not to let it control my life anymore. I could choose to take this as a lesson, not a wound that would keep bleeding. It took time, though. It wasn't an overnight change. But when I thought about it, I realized that holding on to all that anger was just letting her win. I didn't want to be her victim. I didn't want to carry that weight around anymore. I was done being trapped by this situation. So, in a way, I forgave her. But I also kept my boundaries in place. I knew I couldn't trust her again. I wouldn't be fooled by her again. But that didn't mean I had to let it ruin my life. After all of this, I started focusing on one thing: boundaries. This whole experience made me realize how important it is to set and respect your own boundaries, especially when it comes to online interactions. It's so easy to get swept up in the flood of messages, likes, and digital connections. But I wasn't going to let myself be taken advantage of again. I began to approach relationships, whether online or in person, with more caution. I started to trust my gut instincts more. If something felt off, I didn't brush it under the rug or ignore it. I'd ask questions, look deeper, and make sure I was dealing with someone who was being honest and respectful. It wasn't about being paranoid or distrusting, it was about respecting myself enough to demand honesty and transparency from others. It's amazing how something like this can teach you that. The next time someone tried to pull me into a weird situation, I was ready. I wouldn't let myself get caught in a web of lies and deceit again. It wasn't just a lesson for online interactions, either. It was a lesson for all aspects of life. I started to value my time and my emotions more. If someone wasn't treating me with respect or honesty, I didn't hesitate to walk away. And let me tell you, there's power in that. Looking back, I've come to a simple conclusion: people will lie, manipulate, and deceive. That's part of life. But the real question is, how do you handle it when it happens to you? How do you move forward without letting it ruin you? For me, it was all about reclaiming my own sense of self-worth. I didn't let her actions define who I was or how I saw myself. I didn't let that fake profile become a reflection of my reality. Instead, I took it as a lesson in trust, in boundaries, and in the importance of always being honest with myself. If there's one piece of advice I'd give to anyone reading this, it's this: always trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. Don't let anyone pull you into their chaos. And, most importantly, don't let anyone take away your peace of mind. If someone disrespects you, it's okay to walk away. You don't owe anyone your emotional labor, especially not when they've shown you they can't be trusted. As for me, I'm in a better place now. I've healed, I've learned, and I'm moving forward with a stronger sense of who I am and what I deserve. Life's too short to spend it on people who don't have your best interests at heart. So, to anyone out there who's been in a similar situation, my advice is this: don't let betrayal be your defining moment. Let it be a lesson. Let it be the moment you learned how to protect your heart, set stronger boundaries, and never settle for anything less than honesty and respect. You're worth it. This concludes the story. Thanks for following along, and I hope it resonates with anyone who's been through something similar.